we're talking about the bear.
We are.
This
I
is
got
topic
so
number
much
1.
to say about this.
Okay. All right.
I have
So where do we
Josh is
start?
more excited for the bear than his family.
Right.
No,
Then
family
seeing
No, I was
video.
overwhelmed with that.
Joshua's
Bear, I knew what to
I have
expect.
nothing to say. And then
Josh,
he's like, I
this
got
is
so much to say.
Jeremy Allen White here is Josh looking at those reels.
Right.
Okay, no, I was overwhelmed for that. I'll process that off film,
Yeah.
off screen
Let's
with
get
the
back in.
family, as you should. I'll gather around with
Not
the
for me.
family
I like to share it with the world.
But no, I got so much to say about this. But do you have anything specific you wanted to talk about, Wyatt, before I kind of
I just kind of want to start at the beginning of the show because I remember you started watching it before me.
Yeah.
And you said the first half of the show,
The first 3 episodes, in my opinion, were slow and took a second to get back into it because I don't think so. We didn't see any food stuff, I think, till episode 3, and I was like,
yeah,
this is a show about food. Why are we not seeing that? And it was because they kind of had to establish this season is definitely a little bit different from the first season of it is about the restaurant, but they're not in the restaurant the whole time. So it's more about the characters that they've already developed a little bit. And they develop a lot more with this season, especially in the later half. So the first 3 episodes were slow, in my opinion, or at least the first 2. And
yeah, it is a lot of setup. It is a lot of setup, but I think what the show does really well throughout is character conversations and character interactions are so solid that even with the first few episodes, I was just enjoying hanging out with the characters,
right?
Them trying to solve problems, trying to figure out how to do this business thing, and it was quite enjoyable. But I think you're right. I think some people, may not enjoy it because it is a lot of setup.
Yeah.
And then, I think after Marcus's episode, where he goes to learn how to cook some interesting desserts and things.
Well, that episode,
good episode,
was good. That episode,
and you know what? The episode is slow, but
Yeah,
the way that it does everything,
engaged,
so engaged.
Like you were right there, even though it feels like it's moving at a boring pace,
even down to helping some old guy out of a fence.
Right?
What was
yeah,
that?
that was a little bit odd, but
it's like that was out of nowhere. But it's important because those are things that sometimes happen, that we have interactions that we can't really explain.
Yeah, and I think it also. So, I mean, I've got so much to say about character development, but like that in itself built character development for him, Marcus, because of his mom's situation and like everything he does for his mom, and
it pays off at the end of the show.
Oof.
Yeah.
In a very ominous way.
Yeah.
Will Poulter coming in here.
He did. Yeah.
Just being a fantastic character.
Yeah. He didn't do a lot.
He didn't do a lot.
It was good to see Will Poulter in this serious chef kind of dramatic role rather than this, goofy kid type character that we see him in a lot of, like in the Millers or even as in Marvel these days.
We have this we have these kind of interactions all throughout this season of and we introduce sort of a new character that we're just that's going to influence our main cast. So Will Poulter, I don't know the name of the guy that Richie interacts with, but also the head chef that Richie interacts with.
Yeah. There's quite a few characters that he interacts with.
Episode. I'm just now noticing that in this restaurant, they have an every second counts sign up on the wall.
It's supposed to be the same restaurant, I think. Isn't it?
Is it? No, that's because
no.
Because the other lady's restaurant is in like Chicago or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I think personally, I got most engaged on this episode.
Yeah.
Like once watching through the second season, I was thinking like, man, this is kind of. I wonder if this season is going to even be close to what the first season was. And then we got to this episode, and something about this clicked, and I was like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah, this is the
it's
episode
like
where
it
it
finds
clicked.
the groove, and then
Mhm,
you're hooked for the rest of the season."
mhm,
But but and for some, I don't even know what about it, and I think that's what's so cool about this show is that like you get fascinated and interested, and you feel an emotional connection with the work that these characters are doing, the
mhm.
Mhm.
food, the process, even just the way they're interacting with each other on camera, and you don't fully understand why. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
You're just hooked, and I think
Yeah, that's I mean, that's what this show does so well, and I think why I've found it so interesting from the very beginning was that these for some reason, I don't know how they do it, but these character interactions and conversations where in another show they might be um they might feel forced, they might
Mhm,
feel way too long. These ones they'll have 5 to 10 minutes of just two characters talking to each other,
right,
and it feels engaging,
right.
feels
Yeah.
fun. It almost feels like you are in the room, like you're smelling everything that's going on, like you're hearing kind of the quiet, like when
Yeah.
these two are there early in the morning and they're just making stuff.
Yeah, or specifically the episode where he's cousin is peeling the
Feeling the
mushrooms with the head
mushrooms.
chef.
You could smell the
So
mushrooms.
good.
You
So
can
good.
hear the silence, like, maybe there's stuff happening in the background, but they're so early,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and because 'cause we've all had these late conversations with one person,
Mhm.
or it's early in the morning or whatever it is,
Yeah.
they do it so well, it feels like you're in there. And I think that lends itself very well to um, the mid-season episode,
7 fishes or
Yeah.
The
something?
Seven Fishes,
Right.
which while where these conversations are so real and so engaging, the discomfort that the show will put you
Mm.
in this episode, and even in the last season with some of the episodes, but this
Right.
episode is brilliant.
It really is.
So
It's a brilliant episode.
I was talking about with Wyatt. I understand what they were doing with this episode of it gave character development and
Mhm.
it progressed characters. I did not like this episode
That's
because
crazy.
because
Honestly, that's crazy, that's
of
crazy.
it did not progress the restaurant or that. It all it
Mm.
did was give character development and reasoning behind why certain characters do certain things. And so that I didn't care for and I got bored on this episode, but then they come back with a very strong episode with Fort.
But, like, here's the thing, there's something that happens a lot in TV shows, movies, books, called retroactive storytelling, where later in a season or a show, they'll go back and be like, "Oh yeah, this is something that happened in the past that
Mm,
you haven't known about up until now that gives context." And it always feels incredibly forced. But
Right.
the
yeah.
way that they've written this show, that when they introduced this episode, they introduced characters into this episode and interactions and things that happen that track
Well,
Right.
naturally.
and they did this in the first season. I just don't think they dedicated a whole episode to it. I don't
Yeah,
remember where they did show that like one scene with John Bernthal and kind of the
right.
family in it on
But
season
this
one.
is this is really super important to, I think, going back and watching the first season. This, I
Mhm.
think, informs a lot of the character motivations. And
It
that's what
does.
this
It
show is
does.
about is, we talked about, well, let's get through this. This moment in particular, I think, is really strong. It's really solid. There's a lot of moments in this episode that are um kind of heartbreaking,
Right.
and and uncomfortable in we Josh and I talked about this. There's uncomfortable in how close to reality it gets.
Yeah.
How
Right.
many times how many times have you had an interaction with a family member, or your mom is trying to make Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner and is freaking out, or
Well, not in all
something like
families,
that.
but a good chunk of
A
Yeah.
them,
good
right?
chunk of family, and it's not like all the time where like we're not saying that every mom is bipolar, but very often your mother, becomes bipolar at big family events for
Right.
some reason.
Becomes
And
bipolar.
like it's so weird, and then the secondhand embarrassment, the family members yelling at each other,
Mhm.
because
Stuff.
there's so much stuff that they know about each
Right.
other, that they disapprove of, that they're angry about, that they're hiding. Like when Odenkirk and Bernthal start yelling at each other, throwing forks at it, and he's calling him nothing, and he's like honking at him like a goose.
Right.
It's like they had this perfectly civil interactions up until this point,
Mhm.
and just everything comes out.
Yeah.
Well,
And
okay,
this moment where he shows him the picture of the restaurant, and he knows that he's wrong. He
right.
knows that his brother has so much talent. He has so much vision and drive, and he is what Bob Odenkirk says later. He's nothing. He's a nobody, and he knows he's going to be a nobody.
Mm.
Um, and he feels like he's tearing everybody down.
Yeah.
Right. I think, what you were mentioning earlier about, understanding later, there's so much to Carmen's character that you
Mhm.
Mhm.
get context for from this episode. So
Yeah.
much that it doesn't have to be told to you, but you just understand like why he
Mhm.
reacts in certain ways. Like the conversation later on, I can't remember if it was the last episode or the second to last. I think it's the second to last. But he's Carmen's talking to Claire at the house, and
Mhm.
he's like, he's waiting for the other shoe to drop, right?
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
relationship. You wouldn't understand that concept as fully without knowing his family dynamic and what
Mhm.
he's
Yeah.
always been around. And
Oh.
I think that because he's just always waiting and bracing himself for emotional catastrophe,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
And also that I was talking with either Wyatt or John Mark about this, where like at the end when he's in the freezer and he has that conversation of I'm sorry because I was spending all this time with Claire and not working on the restaurant. And John Mark and Wyatt, I think they were like, "Oh, that's dumb. They should have just said he should have just went out and apologized to Claire and kind of tried to get back with Claire." And I said, "Well, hold on, because of the first season and because of this, Carmen is in this battle of choosing something that's good and is good for him of being with Claire, but then he
Mhm.
also has the restaurant, and it's not just about something that I've always wanted to do of own my own restaurant. It's very deep emotions with kind of proving his brother right
Mhm.
of if I don't get this restaurant to be successful, I'm proving my brother right. I'm letting my brother down, and my brother died for this. And so I'm letting my brother down on one hand if I don't choose the restaurant,
Mhm.
and I'm letting Claire down if I choose the restaurant instead of Claire. And so
Right.
he's in such like a dynamic, like I can't. It doesn't feel like I can choose one. I can't choose both of them. I have to choose one because that's the only way
Well,
that I can
I,
live.
I I would like to set the record straight. We weren't saying this isn't deep, or that we never said this is dumb.
No,
Mm-mm.
no, no.
And
I was just
and
kind of
yeah, I
plagiarizing.
paraphrasing. I think we were saying that you can have both, and he doesn't, and he
Yeah,
thinks that he can't.
yeah,
Um, but you're right. There's a lot of context, even going back to the very reason that he left, of trying to prove his brother wrong, of
so,
wanting almost to compete with him, and prove that he can become like an incredible chef.
Mhm.
There's so much context here,
yes,
and the reason that he's making this decision. I mean, just the conversation that he has with Richie,
Right.
where they're screaming at each other, and
yeah,
he says, I don't know exactly what he says, but he calls him Donna. He calls him his
Yeah,
mom,
yeah.
and he's like, "What?
He's
What
like,
did
"What
you
did you just say?
what did
What
you
did you
say to
say?"
me?"
Right,
And
right.
it's this.
Which, by
Mhm.
the way, fantastic from Jamie Lee Curtis.
So good.
Jamie Lee
Incredible.
Curtis. I don't know how Jamie Lee Curtis didn't get nominated for an Emmy with her performance in this
I
show.
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Did Bernthal did,
He did, which we're
and
going over later, I think.
Bernthal was good. Bernthal was good. I love him.
But
There's
Jamie
He's
Lee
a great
so
Curtis,
actor.
many
But
characters
Jamie Lee Curtis,
that could have been
Odenkirk did
nominated
great.
here. Yeah.
Odenkirk did fantastic, but Jamie Lee Curtis just
Mhm.
blew her role out of
right.
the park.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was it kinda leads into something that we also were talking about with when she comes to the restaurant at the
Mhm.
end, the final episode, where she says, "Tell me." She's talking to, the brother-in-law or her
What's the
wife's
brother? Yeah, what's her
her
son-in-law's name?
sister's,
Let's see.
husband. I don't know
Sugar's
his name.
husband.
Yeah,
Let's
and
see.
she says,
Is it
"Tell me
Pete?
it's okay."
Yeah, Pete.
From Pete. Yeah, she says,
Is
"Tell
it
me that
Pete?
it's okay not to go into the
Mhm.
restaurant," and him saying like, "No, just come in," because he doesn't know how to deal with the situation,
Yeah,
and
and John Mark didn't like how he dealt with the situation.
yeah, but I
But
think
it
that's the
makes
most
sense for his character. Yeah,
human
yeah, yeah.
and normal interaction. Like a
Especially
normal
for
human
somebody.
would be like, come in," but
Mhm.
he didn't know what to do in that situation, and so it felt
Especially for
good.
somebody he's a son-in-law, and he
Mhm.
knows how his wife feels about her mother,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
he knows, and he's clearly seeing some emotion from the mother, and he's uncomfortable.
Yeah, but he also
She's
wants to do what's
making
best for his wife.
right, and yeah, and that's why when he comes back in and he's crying, he's got this conflict in him, and
Mhm.
I'm really happy that they did that because I liked him in the first season
Right.
Yeah.
as kind of, wow, her husband's kind of boring, but clearly he loves her so much
Yeah.
that he's willing to protect her from her own emotions,
Yeah.
Right.
from her own family. And that is, I think, going into the third season, that is going to carry a
Oh,
lot of weight. And just there's so much that we could talk about with
yeah.
this
Well,
show.
We
yeah.
kinda need to
So
wrap this
look,
up,
look.
but
Before we wrap this up,
Mm.
we gotta acknowledge. What did you guys think of Sydney's character and Richie's character? Because those are two big ones that
Sydney,
we have
Richie,
not touched on really.
Marcus.
yeah.
Well, Sydney's like the co-lead, and we
Yeah.
Yeah.
barely mentioned her.
Well, her story, I think, her story in this season resolves really well of
Her dad's
worrying
relationship.
about, yeah, her and her dad's relationship. And I think that's kind of the one relationship that resolves positively,
Mhm.
um, is her and her dad. Because every other thing, Richie, everybody in Carmen's relationship is strained.
Yeah.
Hmm.
um Marcus and whatever's going on with his mother, if she perished or not,
I
Jamie Lee Curtis and Sugar and
I will
Pete.
say one thing about her character though.
Sydney's.
Yeah, Sydney's. Now that I'm thinking about it, it felt a lot of every time we saw her. Now, when she was by herself, she was doing restaurant things, and that I
Mhm.
think she was the one in the story overall that kind of brought the food back into the show a little bit.
Yeah,
So
holding it
that was
together.
good. They used her character to do that when she was like visiting restaurants trying to figure out the
Mhm.
menu. But I didn't like it was get mad at Carmi for something. I'm sorry. Then get mad at Carmi again. I'm sorry. It felt very back and
Mhm.
forth to where I wish there was a little bit more to that. And I understand they had to cut it off somewhere because they couldn't just do everything. But I wish maybe there was like her really getting mad at Carmi and then maybe staying more mad than just like this back and forth. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
get mad. Sorry, get mad. I wish there was a little bit more in that department, but
Right.
but her character was good when they used her to bring in like more food and stuff.
And obviously we can't overlook Richie's involvement. Richie's episode is
He's my favorite
so
character.
good.
He's my favorite
It's such a
character.
good episode of just how he he starts to understand that, you know, this industry is something special. There's there's a part of it that he's really good at it. There's
Mhm.
people that really love what they do, and at the end, he's like, and all while, you know, the Christmas episode built on his relationship
Mhm.
with his ex, and
Right.
then this episode furthers it, and he realizes that he's good at something, and he kind of, you know, he blames Carmen of like, you know, I know you sent me here to just like get me out of the way,
Yeah,
and you know, whatever, but and then he realizes that no, he believes in
he
me.
believes in him. But he also
Ah,
so this
Good.
relationship with Carmen too, uh, is there I was talking with Wyatt about how at the end too, when him and Carmen get into a big fight and you see Carmen's in the freezer and he's kinda yelling at the door, he's also yelling at Carmen to be like, "What'd you do to Claire?
Yeah.
What'd you do?" Because he, I think, sees in himself they didn't make this very known, but I think it's just kind of in the background. It's like he sees Carmen's gonna mess up a relationship, and he had in this season, you see where he had messed up a relationship
Mhm.
already himself. And
And
so
he blames himself and he hates himself for
yeah,
it.
so he was like, "Carmen, don't mess this up."
Yeah,
And he
this
says
girl
that
is really
several times
fantastic.
throughout the show. Yeah.
yeah, it's
It
almost like they're destined to screw things up.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what the interesting part of this show is, and I don't know why. We'll talk about this later. This is clearly a very dramatic show.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Ethan was jumping into, this season for the first time. He didn't watch
yeah,
season 1,
Ethan had
and he just walked away from episodes. "That was too much. I don't like this
he
show."
yeah, even at the end he was like, "That's way too much for me."
Mhm.
Ethan's um doesn't enjoy as much with the heavy dramatic,
Yeah.
Right,
uncomfortable situation kind of stuff.
right.
The kind of chaos of this show, which I
Mhm.
get. It's not necessarily for everybody, but man, does it
It
tell
it
a good story.
It
it
does.
tells a good story, and tuggies at the pull strings and
Mhm.
does it well.
There's
Yeah.
so many unresolved things that we could talk about.
Yeah, we could talk about that for a
Um,
while.
but I'm gonna.
We do gotta
I
move
like
on.
this season. Really sets up the third one to be really incredible.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe hopefully wrap up the show.
Right.
Gosh, I hope it wraps up the show.
So, I'm if I was
Three
gonna, like
amazing seasons of a show would be incredible.